Ben Carson is talking to Steve Chaggaris, and this is after the debate. Let's listen in as Steve interviews Ben Carson.
Dr. Carson, just your initial thoughts about tonight's debate.
Well, tonight's debate was kind of bland, quite frankly. I wasn't enamored totally by the way that it was done.
What was wrong?
Well, I thought the moderators kind of lost control. And, people were just like all over the place.
Do you feel frustrated that as the guy who's number 2 in a lot of these polls now didn't seem to have as much time as some of the others?
There's no question that more questions were directed to Mr. Trump. But I think probably I could say the same complaint for pretty much everybody else up there. But to Mr. Trump's credit, he didn't try to hog the time, even though they kept asking him questions.
So is there a frustration on your part, and did you sense a frustration on the others' part, just that this was focused so much on Donald Trump?
Well, I'm not as frustrated when I see the numbers. 300,000 new Facebook fans, $1 million in contributions during the debate. So that's not very frustrating.
In your opportunities tonight, how did you feel that you did?
I thought it was fine. I would love a situation where you had like 2 minutes to give an answer so that you could actually put some meat on the bones rather than just a little skeleton. Because when you just produce a little skeleton, the next thing they're saying is, well, you didn't mention this, you don't have time to mention this and that.
What issues do you think weren't brought up that should have been brought up in a debate of this length?
I would have liked to have seen them address the Black Lives Matter issue and what's going on with our police. I would have liked to have seen them talk about, a little more about Putin and how to control him, not only in that region of the world, but in the many other regions of the world. And I thought there was very little debate on the U.S. economy and how we get the U.S. economy moving again. I would have loved to have talked about what Bernie Sanders is always talking about, the income gap, and really talked about the real reasons that it exists and how you really fix it.
Put your pundit hat on real quick. Who surprised you tonight among the other candidates?
I thought they were all pretty much as billed.
What do you think of Carly Fiorina?
She did as I would have expected her to do.
Is that good, bad? What did you expect?
She's a very good speaker. Very good, spontaneous, to-the-point speaker.
Did you think that? Do you think that Donald Trump should have apologized to Columba Bush?
I would have if I'd said, come on, bringing somebody's wife into it, that's ridiculous.
Okay. I think you have to go. So thank you so much for your time.
Dr. Carson, do you support an audit of the Federal Bank Reserve?
Steve Chaggaris just finishing up the interview there with Ben Carson. Steve, I think that's really interesting that he thought the debate was rather bland.
Walker's right there.
Yeah, I thought so too, but I mean, it's interesting because I think a lot of the pundits thought that he didn't have a great performance tonight. So a lot of pundits thought that he didn't have a great performance tonight, and a lot of folks, I think, thought that he might have been bland. Maybe his feeling about the entire debate sort of came through in his performance tonight.
Yeah, it's interesting him mentioning that there was no coverage really of the Black Lives Matter movement or any questions about the criticism that police nationwide are facing, the scrutiny they're under because of abuses of power in that case. But in your experience, have the candidates individually out on the campaign trail been talking about that to constituents?
It's not a huge issue. I think you've had some of them weigh in a little bit, like right after some of these shootings, but it's not a big issue for Republicans. I did think he brought up a good point on that there was not a lot of talk about the economy, and I thought that was sort of fascinating in a debate this long, that there was not more discussion of the economy, because it is one of the issues that consistently shows up at the top of the polls that voters are interested in. And so he did make a good point there. And it sounds like he had some things to say about that, and he regretted that he wasn't asked about the economy.
Well, and he also mentioned not having enough time to answer Certainly, there were people who managed to give long answers. Marco Rubio had an answer about immigration for at least a minute and a half that went uninterrupted. But in many cases, it did function more like a debate, complete with interruptions by other political opponents. In that sense, are the candidates likely to feel that they were able to get their point across?
I don't know. I'd like to talk to some more of them about that. It seemed like this was what was really interesting. What the moderators did here was they really tried to foster conversations between candidates. They said they were going to do that going in, and I think we saw a lot of that going through the evening. So I think as a viewer, it made it interesting to hear where the juxtaposition between candidates was. I understand, I guess, his frustration a bit on the short answers. They did go for almost 3 hours, so you figure they could have at least allowed them a little bit more than a minute in their terms of in their initial responses. And they spent a lot of time on certain issues. I'm not going to criticize how CNN put their debate together, but it just seemed like with all the amount of time that they had to discuss all this stuff, I understand they had 11 candidates, but maybe they could have given folks a little bit more time to speak.
Steve Chaggaris, I know that you're in the process of lining up the candidates to talk to them after the fact, and we're looking forward to eavesdropping on your next interview. Thank you.
Thanks.